I'm in need of a custom lightsaber stand, and these Blue Yeti USB mics aren't worth the box they come in. But the base is sorta neat looking. Alright, I'm just kidding about throwing it out. Sorta. It's going in the greebly bins after I break it down further. Anyhow, this part is going to serve as a really nice stand for this katana saber with some minimal modifications. I'm gonna need to make some cuts where the mic used to mount, so I'll take a couple measurements and mark it up. Then following the profile that I drew, I'll remove the mounting points with a jeweler's saw, making a nice U-channel to hold the saber. Now this particular saber also runs the lights on my table, and changing the battery constantly when I want to leave it on for display is a drag. So I'm adding a connector here for wall power integration. It'll make more sense here in a few minutes, just hang with me. These saw marks need cleaned up before finishing, so I used a combination of files and sandpaper to get symmetrical sides and a smooth finish. And I needed a little place to house this greebly as well. I cleaned all my surfaces, mashed the connectors, and gave it 2 coats of satin black. While that's drying is a good time to knock out some of the electrical tasks. First, I need to make a dummy cell that we can wire up to pass the power from the switching power supply to the saber. I made a wood dowel the same diameter as my 18650s, drilling wire passage holes through it. And I'm going to use these female Chicago screws for my button caps. To achieve a good electrical connection, I'll first fill them with flux, then solder, melting each in turn. Finally, remelting the solder and pressing in my wires. These are then installed in the dummy cell, and you can see it fits nicely in the saber. I really like the satin black, but I'm going to tone it back with a little bit of a gunmetal finish. And to achieve that, I'll just be gently rubbing graphite powder into the paint. I'll even knock a little of the paint off the edges here and there for a lightly weathered look. The graphite does come off with handling and it's messy, so I'm giving it a clear coat. This does dull the gunmetal finish, but I can repeat the whole process layering it until I achieve the right look. This is a switching power supply that gives me the 4.2 volts I need for powering the lightsaber. I'll link to it down below. Here is a random power cable from my junk power cables drawer. This will be used to run AC power from a wall outlet to the power supply. The power supply has 3 in terminals, and I can verify how to wire the cable to it based on a standard American plug schematic and using a multimeter to check which wire goes to which prong. I like that the connectors here protect the copper wires, so I'm trimming them down and making them permanent with solder. Now I'll mount the power supply behind my table with a few screws. They don't come with it, by the way, but tiny screws from junk I have scrapped over the years work perfectly. The ground, neutral, and live wires can all be connected at this point. Keep in mind, nothing should be plugged in when installing. This power supply is adjustable in a small range, and getting it dialed in before operation is key as you don't want to fry the electronics. The Profi board in my saber can take up to a 4.5 volt input, but I don't currently need to set it any higher, so I'll leave it at 4.2. I can always adjust it later. After final adjustment, I need to connect power to my saber stand, and I'm adding in some visual interest along the way. Here's the other side of the connector that I mounted to the stand earlier. I'm adding these power wires to connect it to the supply. These are called pin connectors, by the way, and they just have a cool vintage Star Wars kind of look, in my opinion. They're sort of pricey, so I bought a used grab bag of them on eBay. Even better, as they came pre-weathered. I'll probably always unplug the power supply when not in use, but for convenience, I'm going to add in a switch on the saber side of the power supply. Then all that's left back here is connecting my positive and negative leads to the outside of the supply. This does look a bit confusing as I didn't show how I built or wired the table, but something important to note on bizarre builds like this table or large saber blades is that if you have LEDs that dim or yellow in a long run of pixels, you can adjust the voltage up to 4.5 volts with the Profi board, and or split your positive and negative leads from the blade connector and run them halfway down your blade to supply fresh power. To complete the saber stand, I need to get my dummy cell soldered up to the connector. So I'll finish feeding the wires here and then make my connections. With the wires soldered, I securely glued the tubing in place and added a metal Lego. This table is still very much a work in progress, but I'm quite happy with what the saber and stand add to the look. Most of the stuff I've used has been from the hardware store or my junk boxes. So, if you want to make something cool, just find the things that you aren't using and change them up a bit. Or go wander around a store and let your mind go wild. Please leave me a like or a comment and subscribe if you're interested in seeing my future videos. As always, there are more on the horizon, and I look forward to seeing you guys all then. Take care, everyone.